After using the Canon R5C on numerous sets for the past couple months now, both stills shoots and video productions, I'm ready to talk about why I think it's the best hybrid camera out there and how it can make your life easier on set. My name's Dustin Schmidt and I'm a photographer and DP here in Oklahoma City. I shoot both a lot of stills and video, and so I think I'm a little bit more uniquely qualified to talk about some of the benefits of the R5C than some people that are looking at it from just the video perspective. But if you shoot stills as well, then this camera really can take the place of two systems for you. It can do both jobs equally well. It's basically like an R5 on the still side. And on the video side, I've used this camera effectively as a B camera to a C300 Mark III and cut basically 100% interchangeably between the two. Haven't had to modify really anything at all. Shot them both in C-Log 3, 422 10-bit, and they matched up perfectly. So talking a little bit more about this camera and how I use it when I'm doing different things. When I was shooting interviews with this, and we spent a couple days in the same room shooting a bunch of different interviews, and I didn't need a huge setup for that. It was just going to sit on a tripod the whole time. And the nice thing about this is that you can power it through the USB-C, right? So it's just got the little input on the side here for the USB-C, which gives you a lot of options. You can run this off a really cheap like Anker power bank, which is what I have. So I've got this power bank right here. Just a real cheap little Anker power bank, you know, compared to what some of the other options are. You know, V-mount batteries, a lot more expensive for the power. Obviously different use case, right? But I already had this power bank. This is the PowerCore 26800 PD. So it's got power delivery, right? So you need to have a power bank that has USB PD. And then what you can do is I just take my Apple charging cord for like my laptop, right? USB-C. You can plug that into the PD, and this can go straight into the camera, and it'll power it for, I mean, this lasted for hours. Like I did sit down interviews in a room for 5-6 hours, turn the camera off every once in a while when we weren't rolling, but probably we're rolling for 4 hours of that, and still had plenty of juice in this thing at the end of it. And this just either, this is a long cable, so I either just set this down on a table next to where this was set up, or could even set it down on the floor, and it was no problem. I kind of hooked up a little custom bracket for this. So I had a couple parts lying around from other things, and basically what you can do, or at least what I did, is screw this into the top. This is a Arri 3/8 with the locating pins on here. Screws right into the top of the cage here. And then that's solid now. I just put some Velcro on here. And now I can take my power bank, has some Velcro on the other side, put that right there, attaches, and then I've got shorter USB-C cables than this. Like I said, this is just a long one. But now you can run that into there, and this whole package sits on top of a tripod, and like I said, can run for 6 hours. So I know there's some power issues with this camera. If you were going to try it and run it purely off of these little LPE6 batteries. And this is the new one here, so it's the LPE6 NH, which you need to have the NH ones if you want it to run, even for as short as it does. If you've got a lot of older LPE6s sitting around, they don't work nearly as well. You really need the new ones. But that takes care of all the power issues on a tripod for me. I've also got the fancier V-mount batteries, like the FX line. This is the Nano 3, so it's the big one. It's the 150 watt hour. This has USB-C out, so can run it just like my power bank. The difference is I think I got this power bank on eBay cheap. Maybe they were having a sale. I don't know what this costs brand new, but this is maybe $50, and these FX line, especially this big one, was a couple $100. So big difference in price for sure. Now, of course, the usability of this means I can use it with other V-mount and cinema cameras that I have, so that's worth it. But if you wanted to go real cheap, you could do it like this, run your camera for hours. This is kind of the setup that I have when the camera if I'm not on sticks and I want this to actually be functioning more like a run and gun kind of cinema camera. Put a different base plate on here. This goes on here like this. Put a top handle on it. And now I've got a really compact package. Run the cables around here. Put the top handle on. You know, you could put rails on this, whatever you want to do. And now you've got it working more like a cinema camera. Kind of the benefit of this though is that it's so small. I've got plenty of larger cameras. This is nice for the form factor. This goes on a gimbal just like this with a wide angle lens, 24 prime or whatever. And now you've got something you can kind of carry all day as opposed to trying to put, you know, a big giant cinema camera on a big two-handed gimbal. This is a little more compact and speedy. And that's actually how I used it on some shoots. I did a whole day commercial shoot with this, and this was my gimbal camera. Lived on an old school Ronin S, like the V1. So not the RS2 or the RS3 or any of that new stuff, just the old school original one. And this ran, again, that one was a little different because I used the internal batteries here. And I would just shut down in between takes so the battery wouldn't run down. Had a couple of those LPE6 NH batteries and just swapped them out, you know, throughout the day, and was able to run this on that gimbal all day long and get some really nice gimbal shots with some really high quality footage. I was just shooting the 4K XAVC, not even the RAW, and then matching that up with a shoulder mounted like C200, C300 Mark III, and cut that stuff all together for a commercial, you know, that ran for a client. Added some really dynamic shots with the gimbal along with some of the other stuff, and it worked great. So here's that gimbal setup. Like I said, it's literally the original Ronin S here, and I'm running the Canon 24mm f1.4 on here as the prime lens, and I've got the Mikey ND filter, the Mikey EF to RF ND adapter on here. So, and you can see how like low profile this is, right? Like you could probably balance another lens on here if you want to. I ran the 24 for all the shots that you saw. And then just using the monitor that's built in here and the batteries that are the LPE6 NH batteries in here. And that makes for a really lightweight like setup here. See? Like that's it. You can't really get any more low profile than this. And this balance is great. Now you can see how much room we've got in the back. If you were to have a much larger lens here in the front, this is going to have to come back, right? So then you might start running into issues. You can see that there's clearance there. That goes all the way over. But maybe not with a bigger lens, right? But that's not how I run it. So I know you can do some stuff here depending on, I've got some other plates where you could put some extra weights back here for counterbalance, that kind of thing. So it's definitely doable. So that's the Ronin setup, right? And the nice thing about the way this is set up is I've currently just got a Kessler plate on here. And so when I want to take this off and do something, maybe it's going from tripod to gimbal or something like that, all you have to do is just unclip this, pops right off, and then you're off to the races. So the nice part about this is then when it comes to balancing, I can pop that right back on. I know basically how much clearance I have here. Just kind of eyeball that, can clip that back on because it's not a super heavy setup. You can take it on and off easily. And now it's balanced again. So it's that quick to set up and tear down. Here it is kind of built up into a much larger setup here. So you can see I've got a 7-inch monitor on here, small HD. I've got V-mount battery on the back. I've got the body. I've got a Canon 18-80 cinema lens on here. And all this being powered back here. And you've got, you know, this is probably not how I'd run this, but So if you want to build this up into something super heavy that sits on a big tripod and looks, you know, impresses clients or whatever that is, you can certainly do it. But the beauty of this setup, I think, is running it really small, really lean. You know, a small prime on there. I love that the video menu allows you to see and match up exactly with their other standard cinema cameras. I like using their little built-in monitor here. You know, it's not giant, but it gives me all the monitoring tools and things that I need. I can punch in if I need to and check things out. And also I'm very confident in a lot of the systems that they have in terms of checking exposure, you know, with waveform or false color, you know, making sure things are in focus with the face tracking and all that kind of stuff. It's just a really robust system that I know pretty well and trust. And so I don't need all the extra stuff all the time. Micro HDMI port, not great, right? I've got a small rig adapter here that converts the micro into full-size HDMI. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then that way you can run a full HDMI to something here. It's got some strain relief. And I've just got the small rig clamp here on the side to clamp that down and hopefully prevent, you know, a lot of jostling of that port. Same thing with the USB-C power. I've just got that running into our FX Line Nano 3. And that's how I'm running these two ports. So not ideal. It's not as robust as, you know, an SDI obviously, and Canon C200, C300 Mark III. Those are the cameras that I typically shoot with. I want to talk about autofocus a little bit on the video side. Fantastic. Works really well. Use the face tracking mode all the time when I'm doing interviews, things like that. Locks on and stays on. Some examples of that I showed earlier, and no issues at all. So I love that with it. On the photo side, also amazing. If you're familiar with the R5, go watch interviews on that about how well the autofocus and tracking is. It's fantastic. Managed to get sharp photos and in focus photos of whales breaching in Alaska, like I said earlier, which happens, you know, kind of like that. Never know where it's going to pop up. Basically just swung the camera around and, you know, had it on tracking and managed to get shots of that. So if you can do that from a moving boat, I think you can do about anything. Sports, things like that. You can shoot a lot of bursts. Took it on vacation and shot some really nice stuff with some of the native RF glass. Now I have mostly EF glass for this. I actually don't own any RF glass, but I rented some of the RF glass to take on vacation. Went up to Alaska with the family, visited some friends, shot a bunch of portraits and photos up there, and shot stuff from a boat on a long lens. You know, went on a little cruise to see some of the national parks, and was shooting whales with it, and birds and seals and just sea lions, all kinds of stuff from the back of a big boat. And it's fantastic. So autofocus, no issues whatsoever. Some of the best out there. I actually have used the stabilization on it a little bit, especially on the video side. If you want to travel really lightweight, so just the body and a small lens, using the internal battery, there's not a lot of weight there, so you probably want something to help you a little bit. I'm not worried about the crop or anything like that. That's not how I use it. I either back up or just put myself in a spot where the frame is how I want it with the stabilization on, and it works. So I've got that assigned to a custom button, and I just toggle it on and off when I want to use it, when, you know, I need that extra stabilization. The audio part is interesting. I have not gotten the adapter for this yet. I do plan on getting the adapter so I can use XLR on it. I think that's kind of the next big step for me for using this for interview stuff. I just put a scratch mic on there when I'm doing that, and I tend to use the bigger cameras with their built-in XLRs as the main audio source for that. We do a lot of small shoots, and we're small crews, and so we don't typically have a sound guy. We're just working with on-camera sound, and again, that's through, you know, boomed microphones or lab mics through XLRs directly into cinema cameras. So that's primarily why I want the adapter for this versus just having, you know, a little Rode on-camera scratch mic or something like that. Seen some people talking about fan noise. I've not noticed anything like that on mine. I think those were some early units that went out that had some of those issues. I've only had mine for a few months now, so I think they probably worked those out, but nothing that bothers me at all. And like I said, I do a lot of my own sound with mics that are relatively close. The codecs and the recording modes is a big one. Everybody's kind of fired up about this for the 8K RAW. I've shot some 8K RAW sample clips just to see how those look. I've shot some of the Super 35, 5.9K RAW clips to check those out. For most of what I do, I just use the 4K XAVC. The high bitrate matches up almost identically with C200, C300 III stuff. They can use the same LUTs, go straight on, and the cameras just match up. So the RAW for me wasn't a giant selling point. At some point, I'll probably get a little more into it, but for right now, we don't turn stuff where we've got a ton of time to sit and grade a bunch of RAW footage or bog down computers or things like that. So the 4K, all I files work fantastic and look great, by the way, too. I'm not dealing with 15, 16 stops of dynamic range in every single scene that I shoot. Typically, if I'm shooting a sit-down type thing, I'm going to light it. I'm going to bring things all within where I kind of want them to be, and then I'm going to go from there. And the XAVC, 4K C-Log 3 files are great for that. The ISO range is really interesting, having the base 800 and then the 3200 high ISO. I've used the 3200 high ISO just for fun, doing stuff with a family or just grabbing clips or things like that, and it looks great. It's pretty cool to have that built in there, to have those two dual native ISOs. I'm sure at some point I'll have a situation with work where it comes up and I'll need to use it, and so just testing it for that. But for now, I mostly shoot everything in the 800. The color and the LUTs, color, it's the Canon color, looks great. Never hear any complaints. Clients never complain. They just know it looks good. So you can get to a really nice, good-looking image really quickly just by dropping on some of the standard kind of LUTs. If you want to push it a little bit further, you certainly can, but it's pretty easy to get to a good place with this camera. So to wrap things up, why do I think this is the best camera out there? It does basically everything. It's the Swiss Army knife of cameras, and it does it really, really well. Shoots amazing, fantastic video in some really robust codecs that looks really fantastic, really good dynamic range, good autofocus, all that kind of stuff that you need to make videos easily, which is where I'm at. I'm trying to do stuff for clients. We're turning things around fast, and the quicker it can help me get there, the better. And this does that. On the still side, it's an absolute beast. R5, you can use it for sports. It's got resolution for architecture or landscapes or whatever it is that you want to shoot. The autofocus is incredible. The tracking, the different modes for people and animals and cars and all that kind of stuff, which I haven't even really used a bunch. I mostly shoot people, but that's kind of amazing. I really feel like this camera is going to be the last hybrid camera I buy for a long time. And when they're coming out with new cameras, it seems like every couple months there's something new coming out that does a certain new thing. But if you ask yourself what you need beyond something that shoots a really high quality 4K video file that has all the monitoring and tools that you need, this camera does that. When you shoot stills, it's got a giant number of megapixels. It's fast, it's accurate, can use all lenses from the EF lenses to PL to RF. Because of the RF mount, you can adapt it to so many different things. Just the versatility is so huge on this thing. And it should be for the amount that it costs, because it's very expensive. But it does a lot of things. So if you're not going to be caught up in the arms race of always having to have the newest, best thing all the time, this camera will serve you really well for a really long time. So that's it for me. Appreciate the time. Hope this video was helpful, and we'll see you next time.